You know what we're doing today? A classic lore video, no nonsense, no acolyte. We're just gonna talk about the duros species. The duros were a humanoid species very common in the Star Wars galaxy with reptilian ancestry, large red eyes, slit mouths, and no noses. And no, that's not a duros, that's a Neimoidian. What's the difference? Well, let's go to the Essential Guide to Aliens. That gives us the story of a duro being misidentified when going for, and I'm not joking, a job application. Really? The woman looked surprised and apologetic? Well, pardon me. It's just that I'd never met a Neimoidian commercial pilot before. Neimoidian? I was incensed and I tossed the application down and walked out. How in space can someone confuse us with that slimy, spineless, no good people? Our eyes are a nice deep blood red, not dark pink like theirs. Our skin is bluish green, not greenish blue. We have a more defined jawline and our lips are much more prominent, and at least we take care of our offspring. There needs to be a cultural education so our proud spacefaring people will not be confused with a bunch of spineless cowards. And yeah, for people who watch the movies, that's probably the first thing you need to know about duros. We do see this species all the way back in the original Star Wars movie. There's a few in the cantina. They're, however, related to Neimoidians like the Trade Federation officials in the prequel trilogy. Specifically, the Neimoidians were descended from a duros colony on the planet Neimoidia. And in this video, I'll get back to the sort of basic facts about the duros later, but I want to talk about their importance as a spacefaring species within the Star Wars galaxy. This was actually an aspect of the species established very early on. The duros were first named in Galaxy Guide number 4, where they're described as a calm, peaceful species which enhances their acceptance in all parts of the galaxy. These beings are powerfully drawn to professions concerning space travel. To duros, it's the journey, not the destination. However, that book has more detail and ends up establishing an element of the duros which would remain throughout the entirety of Star Wars Legends, that alongside humans, they were one of the first and most important spacefaring civilizations in the early hyperspace era. It says, and I quote, "The duros have long been traveling the space lanes. Setting out from their planet early in galactic history, the duros quickly established a series of space stations and docking ports throughout their star systems. Soon, these stations became cities, with duros living equally well on both the planet and in orbiting stations, and eventually immigrating almost entirely to the floating cities. Shortly after, the duros developed hyperdrives and began exploring the galaxy. It was actually their friendly attitude which allowed the duros to work well with other early spacefaring people like the Corellians, and it seems pretty clear that they've developed, if not an actual physical evolutionary advantage to being in space, at least a cultural one. However, of course, not all the duros we see throughout Star Wars are spacers, although many are. If we look at individuals from the species, we of course have Shriv from Star Wars canon, and even more famously, Cad Bane, who is a weird looking duro, at least in live action. And I've noticed that just generally duros are often portrayed as being Rebel Alliance members. I don't know if they're supposed to have any real beef with the Galactic Empire. Maybe it's like the freedom-loving nature of the species. But going back to early history, as I mentioned, the duros played a very important role in blazing early hyperspace routes. I talked about how they worked closely with other hyperspace capable civilizations like the Corellians, and that played a large part in the formation of the Republic, and really, aside from humans, were the prominent species in this early era. As navigators, they were also generally more likely to take risks when plotting hyperspace jumps, which, of course, was important when it came to blazing new routes. The duros played an important role in founding, in particular, one of the most important hyperspace lanes within the galaxy, the Corellian trade spine, with them really taking a role in what the essential Atlas calls the first leg. What you have to understand is that duros and the few human civilizations which had achieved hyperspace capability had done so through the reverse engineering of Rakatan technology. I've done an entire video on the Rakatans. Basically, they were a great civilization which failed after their technology stopped working. I can do another video if you guys are interested. However, the duros still didn't have full hyperdrives like we see in the modern Star Wars universe. In those early eras, they were using hyperdrive cannons. When the full hyperdrive was developed, however, the species, which was already ahead of the game, colonized many worlds, including, as mentioned, Neimoidia. As a core species and as a founder of the Republic, the duros were greatly prosperous during the formative years of the Republic. That being said, if we contrast the duros with the Corellians, who we've also been talking about as early explorers, we don't really hear a lot about the duros building up defense fleets or militaries, and as such, would suffer losses to both their colonies and planets in major galactic wars, including to the Mandalorians and later the new Sith Empire. By the time of the modern Star Wars universe, Duro as a planet had been completely lost to industrialization, and almost everyone was living in those orbital cities and structures. Ironically, despite being targeted heavily by the Yuuzhan Vong, Duro as a planet actually saw a benefit to their invasion, as the Yuuzhan Vong used their Vong forming and various biots to turn back the clock on pollution and make the planet once again livable. And I mean, those are the basics. In the Duros, we have a relatively non-violent and agreeable species which not only played a role in early hyperspace exploration, but which currently fulfills much of the galaxy's needs in terms of spacers, shipping, ship production, and more. I'll just end with a brief exploration on Duros biology, since I did reference it earlier. According to the new Essential Guide to Aliens and Species, Duros are tall, thin humanoids with gray, green, or bluish-purple skin, large red eyes, slit mouths, and no noses. Their sense of smell is conducted through glands beneath their eyes. Other than this, there is only one physical peculiarity which differentiates them from standard humanoids: how they produce. Since they are descended from ancient reptiles, Duros lay eggs in a specially prepared nesting room from which their young are born. In this comfortable nursery, the young are nurtured and educated by their parents and other extended family members. So a bit of a weird addition there, at least in my opinion, but that's everything I think you need to know about the Duros species in less than 10 minutes. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover additionally, of course, let me know. But until next time, guys, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.